Hi, everybody. Nadraj Chronicles here, back for the weekly video. Today, we're going to be discussing mental health and mental health challenges that come as Black and brown gay men at midlife. Uh, I have a licensed professional counselor who has agreed to be interviewed around this topic today, Dr. Michael Becerra. I found him on a service called Therapy for Queer People of Color. Their website is therapyqpoc.com if you're looking for therapy or a therapist. And I am glad that he's agreed to be interviewed with us today. So, Dr. Becerra, if you can just talk about your background, your work experience, your education as an introduction.
Sure. Thank you for inviting me, John. My name is Michael Becerra, and as you mentioned, I'm a licensed professional counselor and supervisor. And I'm also an assistant professor at LSU Shreveport, teaching in the Department of Psychology within the counseling program. I've been a counselor since like 2010. It's been a while. I've had a chance to live and work in Latin America, and
Mhm.
now I've lived and worked in the South and in New Jersey, but yeah, right now I'm in Louisiana. So
Okay, very good. Thank you for that introduction, and also thank you again for agreeing to provide my audience your expertise in the mental health field today. So let's just jump right into the topics. The first topic I want to discuss is physical health and aging at midlife. And again, for the audience, midlife is defined by the National Institutes of Health is ages 45 to 65, and another source said age 40 to 60 years old. So that's the audience we're talking to today. Go ahead.
yeah, no. So, midlife men, as you mentioned, 45 to 65, these men are uh, facing a lot of loneliness, unfortunately. Men, I think since the pandemic, if I'm not mistaken, or at least from 2021, have seen a huge decline of friendships. I think 15% in one study mentioned that they have no close friends. Um, there was another study that I came across that what was it, 49% of men are lonely, um, and and this includes LGBT men. So, and I think really, if you ask most people, a lot of people lost friends during the pandemic, and people were inside their homes for those that weren't considered essential workers. So, I think we're just starting to come out of that, but for you know, I find that is a big problem, which can lead to other issues. Suicide rates have gone up for um, Black and brown men, um, especially in the demographic of 25 to 44. Those rates have gone down slightly for men in midlife, but there is still an issue or a problem. So we got to watch out for that. Physical health, and I'm sorry if I'm getting ahead of myself.
Hmm.
Physical health is, during midlife, it's when men start to see some of their issues, whether that's high blood pressure or pre-diabetes, sleep apnea, that seems to be a pretty big one. That's uh, men already don't go to the doctor as often as they should. So these chronic illnesses can sneak up on you if you're not paying attention or if you're too busy living life. So,
Okay. And what are the mental health challenges if you do have physical health problems, and how do you mentally cope with that?
well, I think finding or having a good doctor, is, or having a good doctor, having a good medical team, right?
Hmm.
Maybe it's your primary care, maybe um, it's a cardiologist. Just having a team that you trust and that you check in with each year to make sure that everything's going okay. Um, so definitely getting that team together, getting a support network, getting others, involved. If it's a big medical challenge, who are the people on your side who are going to support you during this time? I think that's important. Educating yourself on what the chronic illness is or the disease. I know that we can go down rabbit holes on WebMD and maybe
Hmm.
other sites, but just learning how to discern between what's peer-reviewed science and what's just opinion pieces. I know that that's really difficult to do these days, but just finding trusted sources that you can turn to for up-to-date information about what it is that you're managing. I think that's important. Um, Learning how to rest.
Okay.
Men especially work a lot, um, and you know, men in midlife are typically in a sandwich generation where they're having to still care for kids and possibly care for their parents. That can bring a lot of stress. And and it can take up a lot of your time. So really being vigilant about your rest. I'll say self-care, but I feel
Hmm.
like that's kind of an overused buzzword, but just learning how to rest, and not feeling bad about it. So,
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. So I want to move on to the topic of dating and relationships, and we'll also throw marriage in there um, as a person who is middle age. What dating and relationships and marriage entails if you're going through that at this age juncture, 45 to 65.
right. So there's a high percentage of gay men that are single. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's like 60%, um, who are single and not married or in a relationship, and so that's you know that's pretty high, I think. And what
That
could it
would be
be?
me. So,
Well, but but I think that if you're gonna people have their reasons for being single, right? Whether it's career, focusing on career, maybe they have a strong friendship group, where they're getting their social needs met that way. There's, social groups that, activities on the weekends. And so they're able to, kind of get their social needs met. Um, there could be a lot of reasons why gay men are single. We can, the society and
yeah.
health, and we can even look back to the um, when HIV AIDS pandemic. Our generation, Generation X, maybe some of the younger boomers during that time frame, passed away. We saw a lot of our peers die from that. So, that could be another reason why there is a high um, single rate. We lost a lot of
Right.
our peers. So,
Yeah.
um,
And just for the audience, Dr. Becerra shared with me that he is 50. And again, I am 54. So that's what we're talking about. So, what advice would you have for someone, let's say like me, who is open to dating, still open to love, for me personally, marriage is not a life goal, but if
Mhm.
you want that, uh, how to navigate that at this midlife age.
Well, I think we have the benefit of like lived experience, right? Once we're in our 50s, like we've had, or I shouldn't assume that we've all had similar experiences, because some of us come out later in life, some of us come out at 18, 19. So
Hmm.
there could be a varied lived experience within those years. But I hopefully, um, you know, if if we're looking, I don't know, like I'll use myself as an example. I've been in my career for the past, I don't know, 15 years. So that's, I'm not saying that that's like on hold or on pause, but like
Hmm.
that's kind of working in the background. And
Hmm.
I'm in a relationship, I'm in a marriage that's kind of working in the background. Like I just feel like there's more to focus on, right? Like we could focus on um, traveling, and I understand that not everybody can travel, but really putting yourself in new spaces, um, taking that risk. I feel like this lived experience, um, we can afford to take small or maybe safer risks if you're not a risk taker, generally, but like really trying to seek out new spaces. I think that's important.
Okay, very good. And is there anything else you want to say about dating relationships before we move on
Um,
to the next topic?
just like really, not limiting yourself, right? Again, with the lived experience, we know our types, we know, the type of man that we're interested in or attracted to, but maybe not being so like hyper focused and maybe just kind of expanding um that range of men. I know some older men may not want to date younger men, and that's fine. Or men only want to date younger men, and that's fine too. But I just think it's about expanding your um, your criteria so that you're getting to know a lot more people, a more diverse group of men, as opposed to like your exact type. um I think that would be helpful.
Okay. Do you also think some of the singleness among gay men in general, not just at midlife, is which I find very few people to talk about, is the number of LGBTQ people? Like, there's a Gallup poll done at the end of 2022, uh, where the total LGBT population in the United States is 7%. So they put 2.5% gay men, 2.5% gay women, lesbians, and then the other 2% is trans, gender nonconforming, and non-binary people. So if you're trying to find a life partner or a husband or whatever you want to call it, out of 2.5% of the US population, I think that statistic is just like, that means many people are just not going to find that out of that small
Mhm.
number of people. What do you think about that?
True. I mean, and this goes back to my point about kind of expanding your your criteria. you know I, I think it's awesome that we're in 2024. Our communication, we can communicate with pretty much anybody on this planet, if we want to. um you know Internet, travel, um and again, like, I'm not trying to, I know that there's a lot of people that can't travel out of the country, and that's fine too. But if you're in like Louisiana, what's to say that you couldn't meet somebody in, I don't know, Georgia or California or any of those other states? Um, you know, it's just really opening yourself up to, um, I don't know, other places, you know, we just don't exist in our local community. Yes, this is where we work, we live, and, we have, um, you know, friendships and stuff like that, but we're not confined to our local community. My husband's not, from the United States, and he's someone that I met, on my travels in my stay in Latin America. Um, you know, I often think like, wow, this is how fortunate am I to be able to find somebody, um, because I know it's not easy. Trust me. I was I was single. I was, for a very long time, especially while in school and starting out.
Mhm.
You know, I I know the struggle. But I also made a decision that I was going to travel, and if I was fortunate enough to meet somebody along the way, that I was going to, take it seriously. Just because, what do I have to lose? Um, just because somebody lives in a different country, yes, having a different culture or maybe similar culture, um, you know, it can be challenging. Trust me. It could definitely be challenging, but it's worth it, right? I think a good relationship is worth it. It's worth the shit that you have to you have to go through sometimes, excuse my language, but it's you know, it's about what's important to you, right? What's important to your
Yeah.
values, what you want out of life. Um, and I really wanted a relationship. I wanted a family. So I'm willing to, you know, to fight for it and willing to, to work on it.
Okay, very good. So let's segue into another topic, which is it affects, I think, everyone, middle age, and seniors. But I want to specifically talk about the Black and brown middle aged gay men, social isolation and loneliness. Uh, I read a medical report that said that loneliness can affect your health as much as smoking. It can impact you as much as smoking. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, think about it. If you don't have a support group that can support you during, like, I don't know, let's say you're having a work issue or you're dealing with a crappy boss and you need somebody to talk to. Friends usually fill that space. A partner can fill that space. When you don't have anybody to talk to, you tend to keep it all in. And so, if you suppress your emotions, that can lead to chronic illness, that can lead to high blood pressure, that could possibly lead to like prediabetes, lead to depression, just not having that support. I would say, depending on where you live, having an LGBT community is important. Um, I know that there are uh, some LGBT men that may not have a gay friend.
Mhm.
Like, think about it. Like, what would that mean to you at the age of 54, not having another gay friend that you could, I don't know, just share kind of, life experiences, where you're at, kind of share the the day-to-day kind of, I don't know, just of what's happening in your life. Um, not having kind of like that gay friend or that other perspective, that can feel like you're all alone and isolated. So, I, yeah, I think that that's lack of connection, lack of community, lack of social, um, you know, those are really big issues for us.
Okay, so what mental health coping mechanisms can we use to combat those things?
Get involved, right? Find a social group. Um, if family is still, I understand that not every LGBT man may still have a relationship with their family. If they do, getting back in touch with those and you know just focusing on those relationships. Um, putting yourself in new spaces with the hope of meeting new people. Um, it's just not staying alone. Pursuing a passion. Like, is there a sport that you played maybe 20 years ago that, you would like to, maybe start up again? I don't know, did you play soccer, maybe 20 years ago or 30 years ago when you were like in high school or, a young adult? Like that could be something that you could get back to. Maybe you could find a team. Maybe, it's just really finding those opportunities to get involved. Um, so yeah.
Okay, very good. I know a resource that has helped me a lot to remain social is meetup.com. So for the audience, if there's any hobby or interest that you have, Meetup has a group. I'm in two hiking groups because I'm an avid hiker. I'm in two groups that are for Black people who work in information technology. Uh, I'm in just a Black gay male group, just a social group. And then I'm in a group for people with introverted personalities. So whatever it is you're interested in, it's out there. I mean, if it's archery or whatever, rock climbing, there is a meetup
Yeah.
group for that. So I would use that as a resource to stay social and be active. That's a good resource for me. So
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome that you're like so involved in those groups. You know, Atlanta is a great city to be in, to live in as a gay man, for sure, because there are so many opportunities to get involved or to volunteer as well. And another thing that I'm really passionate about is mentoring. I mean, as a professor, like I mentor students, and that's part of my job, but like gay men really have a lot of life experience that they could share with the younger generation. Um, so I think finding those opportunities, I can't think of a mentoring group specifically for LGBT men, but wow, what a great opportunity if there was one to get involved and to really share your, you know, uh, life experiences.
okay, so yeah, I know here in Atlanta there are a couple of organizations that I know of. Counter Narrative Project is a group that empowers Black queer men. So it's gay and bisexual men. Also, I think they also include trans in there. So it's just under the queer umbrella.
Nice.
I know their IG is CNP Tribe on Instagram, and then I believe their website is thecounternarrativeproject.org, or just do a Google search on the Counter Narrative Project to find their website. But CNP Tribe is definitely their Instagram. That's one organization, and there's another organization that I believe still exists called the Gentlemen's Foundation, and they do mentoring also
Nice.
to Black gay bisexual men. So check those out too.
Right
Okay,
on.
very good. So let's move on to the topic of depression as it relates to midlife. I know one area that you spoke of earlier is that for Black and brown gay men our age and older, we went through the beginning of the HIV/AIDS epidemic. So I know for me as Gen X, I know at least personally a dozen people personally, and then people who I just know in general, I can't even count, who did die during the 80s and 90s from HIV/AIDS complications. So there can be some loneliness there because a lot of the people from our generation or the previous generation, baby boomers who bore the brunt of the HIV/AIDS epidemic are just not here. But other issues that we may be facing at midlife as far as depression. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, and, as part of Gen X as well, I have lost friendships. I know my older half brother had passed away with HIV/AIDS back in 2013. Um, and I was fortunate enough to have an older half brother who was gay, so he would take me to the clubs, and I met his friends, and a good majority of his friends have passed away too. So you know it's really sad that like, I don't want to say, I don't have specific numbers, but a good chunk of our generation of gay men have passed away. So, we live with that. And, you know, I, I don't know if there are any regrets if people have, or, if there's like any um, guilt associated with, like survivor's guilt or whatever. But that could definitely, if you're one of few that are still living from your friend group from the 80s and 90s, that can definitely create some depression, for sure. But I think with, as gay men, youth is so important in our subculture. you know uh
Mm.
we all try to, or we're all very hyper aware of our youth, especially like if you're still dating in the dating scene. Anybody over 30 feels like a senior citizen in our community. And 40, 50, that you really start to realize that you're no longer a part of that youthful generation in our community. But you know I think that again, I go back to life experience. We have lived through so many different changes over these past, I don't know, 30, 40 years,
Hmm.
that like, that's so valuable, especially in this time where everything feels like it's just constantly changing. That experience of going through so many changes, I feel like that's a benefit. That's definitely one of our strengths. And to help navigate others who are going through um, these changes. I really do think that we can play an important part um, now, as we navigate through these changes, especially Gen X. Like, I feel like we haven't gotten our our flowers yet, for just being an important, or maybe not important, valuable members of our community. Um, you know,
Yeah.
I think
A lot of
we
what I've
got.
read online is that Gen X is called a forgotten generation because baby boomers, the previous generation, and millennials, the generation after Gen X, are that population is so large, and
Yeah.
Gen X is somewhat smaller. So it's called a forgotten generation a lot. But we're not forgotten. So
Right. Right. We were influential with the internet. And when you look at our kind of our, I don't want to call them leaders, but our members, our peers, Gen X peers, who have gone on to do some really big things
mhm.
for our society. So, you know, yeah. we may be forgotten, but we definitely have a lot of experience that we can use still, like just because we're in our 50s or, early 60s doesn't mean that we're, useless. Like
Right,
we are very useful. And so we
right.
just got to find ways to tap into that.
Yeah. Also, the youngest Gen X's are mid-40s. So
Hmm.
people born, I think the cutoff is 1980. So people
Yeah.
born between 1965 and 1980. So a 44-year-old is a Gen X.
Yeah.
So yeah, so very good. So I want to talk about finally the strengths developed by midlife to expand on that positive note of what we can look forward to, what we've developed from our experiences as young people and the
Mhm.
rest of our lives, basically. So,
I think we've reached a point in our lives that we can lead. Like it's okay if we lead, you know, um, different areas in our life. We can lead at work, right? Depending on on what type of work you do. I'm sure there's got to be opportunities to seek out leadership, especially as boomers are retiring and um, you know, I think that it's our time to step up. I think we can step up in our relationships, our friendships. Again, we've gone through so many different changes, and we've navigated relationships throughout those changes. So, clearly we have that strength to build new relationships or to rekindle old relationships, or whether that's an old friend. um, in one of our previous conversations, John, I remember you saying that you recently met up with a group of friends from like 30 years ago. Like I think that's really cool to be able to do that, to still be in touch with a group that was formidable for you, that was an important, part of your development. To be able to go back and rekindle those relationships, those friendships, that's awesome. It really does show you how far you've grown, you've come along. You know, I think I'm sure there are old friendships in our past that maybe we didn't have enough time, or maybe we kind of took them for granted, but maybe there's an opportunity to rekindle that friendship, especially after, living life. And so definitely we have strengths. We are knowledgeable. We've had an opportunity to build and develop relationships. Um, our physical health. We have an opportunity, especially with like technology and everything is like, I think we're very fortunate to live during this time, to have the amount of technology that we have. Um, you know, I, yeah, I just feel like those are all strengths. And even if we do have a chronic illness, or, maybe a mental health challenge, like there are resources now. Well, there are ways to find treatment. So, you know,
yeah, and I also think in this generation, I can only speak for the Black community that it's destigmatized now about mental health because anytime you said I'm going to a therapist, like, oh, he's crazy, it's
right.
what a typical response would be in the Black community. So now it's an open thing where you can go seek
Hmm.
therapy, get mental help if you need help. There's no shame in it,
Hmm.
and it's just seen as I think it's more so now seen as just like getting physical exercise to maintain physical health. You go to a
Right.
therapist to maintain mental health. So I think that's good too.
Yeah, no, I appreciate, some of these celebrities that have come out, like Charlemagne the God, who talks about his therapy. Like, bravo. Like, I really do think that when you're honest and you're open and talking about some of your challenges and how therapy helps you, I that just signals to other men that that they too should take their mental health seriously or more serious and seek out help. But yeah, like now, yeah, therapy is it almost seems like it's, you know, in vogue. Like it's a trend to be, to be in to have a therapist. Oh, my therapist said this, which is pretty cool. But
Yeah.
even if therapy like is not your thing, finding a coach, finding somebody that you can just bounce off some ideas, somebody who will keep you accountable on your path, super important, and I think it's worth the investment too, because here's the thing, while friendships are good and they're people that we can go to for our problems, like friends just maybe don't have the bandwidth to always be that person that you talk to when there's a problem, or when there's when you have questions about what it is that you want to do maybe in the future, some of your goals. And I really do think that therapy and coaching, mentoring, like whatever, however you want to describe it, I think that there are and that have no skin in the game, right? That they can be as objective as possible. They can maybe from their professional experience could definitely provide that support that you need to get to that next stage. So yeah, I think checking in with somebody is a great accountability measure.
Okay, very good. Okay, well, thank you so much for speaking with my audience today and providing us with your mental health expertise. And again, for those who are looking for therapy, I did find Dr. Becerra on therapyqpoc.com, and that's therapy for queer people of color. So you can just do a Google search for that. Or the other resource I've used in the past is Psychology Today. So you can find a psychologist, you can find a licensed professional counselor. If you may have mental health illness or disease where you require medication, they also have psychiatrists on there if that's what you need. So you can use those resources uh, to find coping mechanisms for your mental health issues, or just to maintain good mental health in general. So thank you, Doctor. And for my audience, I'm signing off. This is Nadraj Chronicles again, and I will see you next week.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.